In 1989, architect I.M. Pei was tasked with modernizing the central entrance of the Grand Louvre. He had to create a functional entry point for millions of visitors while working within the rigid footprint of a historic palace. The surrounding courtyard is completely defined by centuries of French Renaissance architecture, massive limestone walls carrying ornate sculptural details that leave little room for modern interference. Pei's solution bypassed the weight of the stone entirely. By utilizing a steel space frame and ultra-clear diamond glass, he introduced a contemporary form that remains translucent, allowing the historic facades to remain visible through the structure. In 518 BCE, the ancient emperor Darius the Great encountered a strikingly similar challenge on a massive continental scale. As the ruler of a multi-ethnic empire, Darius needed a way to visually unite the traditions of Babylonians, Egyptians, Greeks, and Medes. The goal was to build a capital city that felt cohesive, rather than a collection of architectural fragments. The Achaemenid master builders achieved this by isolating specific artistic traditions from across the empire and weaving them into a new, singular imperial vocabulary. This process is visible at the Gate of All Nations, where massive stone guardians flank the portals. These figures originate from the Neo-Assyrians. Originally, these human-headed bulls were designed to project military aggression. They were carved with 5 legs, creating an optical illusion where the creature appeared to lunge forward when viewed from the side. Persian sculptors altered this code. They gave their guardians a naturalistic, 4-legged posture, grounding the figures in a static, permanent stance. The facial features were also shifted, replacing the aggressive scowl with an expression of calm, dignified majesty. By modifying the stance and expression of a conquered nation's monument, the Persians repurposed the symbol. What was once an image of military intimidation became a guardian of imperial order. In the private palaces of Darius and Xerxes, the architects integrated structural motifs from Egypt, specifically the concave cavetto moldings that cap the doorways. Above these portals, they placed the winged sun disk, a prominent emblem in Egyptian temple architecture. But the context was reversed. Rather than using these heavy frames for deep enclosing shadows, Achaemenid architects integrated these motifs within expansive, light-filled reception halls. By stripping these motifs of their original heavy environment, the builders made them function as decorative accents within a much more open and airy Persian floor plan. The Apadana Hall represents the peak of this synthesis, defined by its slender stone columns. These columns utilize Greek engineering, featuring the vertical fluting and stepped stone bases characteristic of Ionian architecture. The Persian builders then pushed this Greek style to a new extreme, scaling the columns to a height of nearly 20 meters. This combination of Greek elegance and Achaemenid scale created a sense of verticality that neither tradition had achieved in isolation. Moving these international concepts and the craftsmen who understood them to the remote Iranian plateau required a massive logistical effort. The Strait of Hormuz served as the primary gateway for this exchange. It was the maritime choke point that allowed materials and ideas to flow into the heart of the empire. Darius secured these shipping lanes with naval outposts, facilitating the transport of Lebanese cedar, raw Egyptian gold, and vibrant Indian pigments. These secure supply chains provided the necessary foundation for Persepolis. The act of artistic synthesis was only possible because the empire first established the commercial security required to gather the world's resources in one place. By the end of his reign, Darius had established a recognizable Achaemenid style that carried the clear fingerprints of the diverse cultures he ruled. This architecture served as a physical manifestation of his ideology, a state where multiple nations contributed their unique skills to a unified imperial project. This same principle of dialogue between different eras and styles is what makes the Louvre Pyramid a successful addition to the Paris skyline. Monumental architecture reaches its full potential when it moves beyond regional isolation, choosing instead to absorb and reorganize the best traditions from the world around it. Imagining a colossal, hybrid palace stretching across the desert is one thing, actually paying for it is another. Giant structures do not appear in an economic vacuum. To build the ancient capital of Persepolis, the Achaemenid Empire had to stockpile staggering amounts of global capital and physical resources. This map illustrates the center of that wealth ecosystem, the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow maritime bottleneck connected the Iranian heartland to the Indian Ocean. By locking down this choke point, Persia forced merchant fleets to pay customs revenues, funneling wealth into the royal treasury. Alongside customs, the state facilitated massive shipments of Indian teakwood for palace roofs, ivory tusks, and raw exotic stones, all moving through this corridor before being hauled overland to Fars. The foundation of Persian architectural dominance relied on their absolute control over the world's most vital trade arteries. Once the sea routes were secured, the overland networks delivered the rest. Vast caravans transported cedarwood across the royal road from Lebanon, gold and silver from Sardis, and rare gems deep from the silk routes. Look at this raw block of lapis lazuli. To get this vivid blue stone into the hands of Persepolis craftsmen, it had to be mined in Badakhshan, modern-day Afghanistan, and transported hundreds of miles across treacherous terrain. These treasures eventually converged at the Apadana Grand Staircase in Persepolis. Look closely at the reliefs, and you'll find a physical, stone ledger of that accumulated wealth. Carved into the limestone is a meticulous inventory depicting 23 subject nations, each carrying regional treasures. You spot Median delegates carrying crafted daggers, Ionians hauling silver vessels, and Indian subjects delivering gold dust, perfectly rendered in native dress. Earlier empires carved images of violent subjugation. The Achaemenids deliberately chose to sculpt conquered peoples walking side by side with dignity, engineering an ideology of inclusive, harmonious wealth to keep their massive empire intact. Storing that much global capital required the ultimate vault. To protect their sprawling investment from both time and nature, Persian architects had to rely on highly advanced structural engineering. Their first defense was a technique called anathakorosis. Stonemasons carved raised, perfectly polished margins around the edges of massive stone blocks, allowing them to lock tightly together completely without mortar. This diagram shows iron and lead swallowtail clamps embedded deep within mortarless joints, tethering adjacent stones together. Because the region is highly active, these metal clamps acted as a seismic defense system. The lead provided flexibility to absorb earthquake shocks, keeping the platform intact. To protect against water, they excavated a complex subterranean network of drainage channels. Carved directly into the solid bedrock, this invisible plumbing system diverted heavy rainwater far away from the stone foundations. The columns and staircases get the attention, but Persepolis survived for millennia because of this invisible subterranean engineering designed specifically to cheat earthquakes and water erosion. Fast forward 2 millennia to Paris, 1989. The Louvre, another massive historical palace, faced a similar logistical challenge. It needed a new, highly functional portal to handle a massive influx of international visitors. Architect I.M. Pei designed a solution that immediately sparked intense public debate. He dropped a perfectly geometric modern glass pyramid right into the central courtyard of a classical French heritage site. To make this clash of modern glass and historic stonework, Pei relied on the exact same principles as the ancient Persians, extremely precise structural engineering. This image shows the pyramid's hidden strength, a cable tension grid containing 128 stainless steel girders and 16 high-tensile cables. This web completely resists immense wind forces, while appearing entirely weightless to the eye. Pei then pushed the limits of material science. He demanded a custom-manufactured, ultra-clear diamond glass, specifically engineered to eliminate the high iron content that usually gives architectural glass a green tint. By removing that tint, the transparent panels perfectly preserve and respect the true warm color of the historic French limestone facades standing directly behind them. A 2,500-year-old stone terrace funded by the Strait of Hormuz and a high-tech steel and glass pyramid in Paris both reach for the same goal. They prove that true monumental power relies on the harmonious integration of global wealth, technical brilliance, and diverse identities.